thanks for joining us for another episode of Already Won, a Sports Friends podcast. Each week, Coach Ben and Coach Kyle share their insights, interview special guests, and offer some extra words of wisdom. The victory is ours, because we've already won.
Hello and welcome to Already Won, a Sports Friends podcast. I'm your host, Ben Wildman, a.k.a. The Wildcat, and I'm here with Kyle Apps, a.k.a. The Mad Dog.
That's right. Here we are once again. Hey, the Olympics are coming up. It's going to be great. Paris.
Yes, next month. Looking forward to it. But even more in this month, we've got 3 days' time. What we got coming up, Mad Dog?
We got the Euros.
Come on, exciting, eh? And who are you going to support, by the way? Who are you going to follow in the Euros in Germany?
I'm going for Nigeria. I think
Nigeria?
Did they not qualify this year?
They're not there, Mad Dog. Anyone else you think maybe you can follow?
Did Team USA qualify?
The US didn't qualify, didn't make it.
Are you kidding me again? Come on, guys.
I'm telling you,
better than that.
Got away for the World Cup, I'm telling you. But Germany-Scotland first game. Are you going to support the Scots to rival the English, or are you going to? Do you think who's favourites? France, Germany, England. Who do you fancy?
Let's go with my son's team, Denmark. I'm going to go with the underdogs. Let's go with Denmark. I think there's going to pull one off.
There you go. The Great Danes. Well, hey, look, Kyle, that's a big shout there. Let's see how the Danes do. But guys, remember that God has given us the victory. So whatever you do not quit. Remember, this podcast is going to share how you as a Christian can use the amazing gift and tool of sports in this victory, whether you're a player, coach, or fan. Now, look, Mad Dog, you're a bit confused there around the Euros, right? Around Team USA not being there. Everything. You may also be confused about our guest this week. We have Bishop Tony Porter. He is Bishop Tony Porter, who's part of the Church of England. Now, so we're going to try and educate you a little bit more. Yeah. England's in Europe. But what we're going to focus on is some wisdom from Bishop Tony, who I've worked under for 2 years as a sports ambassador intern for the Ministry of Sport as part of the Diocese of Southwell and Nottingham. This guy's got a lot of wisdom and insight. And look, this podcast, we educate people around sports ministry. You've helped me with baseball. We've helped you with cricket. Today, we're going to share how a top senior leader can help us with our understanding of sports ministry and the impact that's had across different regions across the UK. So we're looking forward to it, right, Mad Dog?
We are. Let's get the Bishop in here.
Okay, without further ado, let's welcome this week's guest, Bishop Tony Porter.
Welcome.
Hello.
Great to see you, Bishop Tony. Fantastic. We're going to start off with helping our American listeners understand a little bit about the Church of England. So, Kyle, over to you.
Yeah, got a question for you. As a silly American, maybe needs to be educated on certain things. Just so, as a bishop, former bishop, did you, sir? Are you still a bishop for life? You still can go back there and wave your card that, hey, I'm still the bishop here, or is it a term?
A bishop, always a bishop.
Okay. And then in Nigeria, they're heavily influenced by England, Church of England. So the Anglican Church is rather well established there. And I met different pastors, different reverends, and one was a right reverend. I was always looking for the left reverend. So I don't know if there is left or right or.
It's just a title, and right equals in the Church of England that you are a bishop. It's just a title.
Okay.
No, we don't have any left wingers. No
left wingers. Okay. I didn't know if they, were biased against the left-handers. My daughter's left-handed, so she would never be a left reverend. So, and then lastly, I'll give you three. I'm going to give you 2 words, and just choose the one that you think. And for no reason, you don't have to explain it. Just choose one word. Church or chapel?
Church.
Schedule or schedule?
Oh, schedule.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
Oh, tea every time.
Okay. All right. You pass. You win. You could be a bishop for life.
Okay.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully, American listeners will learn more about the Church of England. We're really excited to dive in to a lot of questions, Bishop Tony. But first, our podcast is called Already Won. What does that phrase mean to you?
The victory for salvation was won on the cross. There's a fantastic communion service in the Church of England. And in the communion service, it says a full, perfect and sufficient sacrifice and satisfaction for the sins of the whole world The Church of England could not be clearer. The victory was won on the cross. We celebrate in every communion service.
So good. So good. Well, we're looking forward to more answers like that. But for you yourself, let's dive into you. I mean, I know recently you have retired, but you're not really retired. Do we ever retire from ministry? But how long were you in ministry for? I think it's 42 years, right? Is that right? Tell us a little bit about that.
It's not retired, it's refired, Ben, okay? And it's 43 years and in ministry. But just to underline, every Christian is in ministry. I was called to a particular ministry, which is ordination and then a bishop. But every Christian is in ministry because the Bible talks about the priesthood of all believers.
So good. Refired, not retired. Come on.
Correct.
That's wisdom. That's wisdom right there.
Yeah. So the question I have is, I read your kind of some of your bio online and different things. It says you played hockey. I didn't know they had ice rinks in England. So before you went to university, you did play hockey. I know that for American listeners, that we call field hockey is a very big sport outside of America. Europe has the men and women both play it, and it's a very fast moving, very aggressive sport. I love watching on the Olympics and different things. Before you went to university, you played hockey for England schoolboys. Tell us how that was, and in your opinion, what makes a great coach?
It was brilliant. And actually, the USA do know about field hockey because the centre half in the England schoolboys team was Gavin Featherstone, and he actually took the USA to the Olympics. He was the coach. And in our half-back line, there's a guy called Norman Hughes, who became the captain of Great Britain, Gavin Featherstone, who took the USA to the Olympics in field hockey, and I was the left half. And as an athlete, there is no greater accolade than being picked to play for your country. It was phenomenal. And I remember the day of the final trial was at Clarence Park in St Albans. And after the final trial, 22 in the final trial, 13 in the squad. Number 4, Norman Hughes. Number 5, Gavin Featherstone. Number 6, I don't believe this, Tony Porter. And it's a thrill down my spine now. And this is a few years ago. What makes a great coach? It's somebody who's got to have played the game. If you're an athlete and somebody's coaching you that hasn't actually played the game, there's no credibility. There's no credibility. And I remember as an 18-year-old, before the final trial, I said to the coach, I said, what makes a good hockey player? What makes an international? And he said the word KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. So I always did, but I got there.
Yeah, I like that. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Brilliant. Well, look, we've heard that brilliant answer around you gave us around already won and talking about what Christ done on the cross for us. Tell us about when you accepted that victory for yourself. I think it was the age of 20, right? What was that like? And I think you kind of had this journey around understanding that the world of sport can be a place where you can kind of worship God and also witness. So share with us a little bit about how you came to faith and then how you kind of got that light bulb moment around the world of sport.
I was brought up to play sport, lovely family, but we didn't do Jesus and we didn't do church. So I didn't have to get anything out of the way. I simply had a very serious accident, actually on the parks in Oxford 9 days before I'd have been an Oxford Blue. And I had a serious injury with my leg, which took me out of that completely for quite a long time. But when I was back in my room, all bandaged up and everything, having been to hospital, a guy came in and briefly said, why don't you use this time to look into the life of Jesus? And I said to him, I'm 20 years old, it's my birthday, I'm reading English language and literature. And I said to him, well, where do you find out about Jesus? Because these nice Christians had never told me. And he said, I just basically read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, showed me where to look. And I started at 5 o'clock, and at midnight, I'd given my life to Christ because I met Jesus in the Gospels. And that was my background. So I thought, well, I don't give up sport because I'm a Christian. Jesus died for the world, not for the church. John 3:16, God so loved not the church, but the world. Therefore, I'm going to go back into my world of sport. And if I can, and as a very young Christian, in fact, I was a day old when I thought it through. I thought, well, I'm going back into the world of sport and I'm going to be a Christian and see what I can do. And so the bottom line was John 3:16, God so loved the world, which includes sport. So if I'm a Christian, that's where I'm going to be a witness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, great. Well, look, we're going to talk a little bit about that, the early days of Christian sport, because a few weeks ago we had the staff worker from Wales from Christian sport, and a lot of our Sports Trend staff will know Andrew Wingfield Digby. He was a guest speaker in 2020, so a lot of our staff at our global gathering met him. But could you share a little bit around those early days and your role within Christian sport? Because what you talked about there is kind of the heartbeat of Christian sport. So share with us, around a bit of that.
Well, a guy called Eddie Waxer, and you'll know in America, was part of Athletes in Action, came over in the late 70s to try and find a few people who were Christians and at a credible level in sport. And of course, Andrew Wingfield Digby was one of them. I was one of them. The guy that used to be a commentator for Wimbledon was a guy called Gerald Williams. There are only 4 or 5 of us, and he shared the vision with us. And we started a prayer meeting in Luton with the captain of Luton Town, a guy called Alan West. And I've always said, when you're starting a ministry, don't have a committee meeting, have a prayer meeting and see how God shows you, not on your own, but with other people, and seek the Lord in there. And that's actually how Christians in Sport in the UK started. Prayer meeting, we met together for a few times, and we thought, well, this is not meant to be our nice people getting together, having a nice cup of tea and a prayer. This is about how to reach people within the world of sport, grassroots level and elite level. There's no difference. And we thought, well, we ought to do something. So we held a Christians in Sport dinner at Tottenham Hotspur Suite in the Chanticleer restaurant. And we invited people from the world of sport. We had a good singer there called Cliff Richard. He was pretty good, actually. And then all we would do is somebody would share their testimony, and one of us, without being abrasive, would share the gospel. It was really important in the early days, and I still share it now. Those people would not have come to church, but they would go to Tottenham Hotspur. So you have to start where people are, in a location they understand. Nice meal, not aggressive, definitely not aggressive, but very clear about the gospel. And that's how it started in the early days.
That's great, and it's still making an impact today. I know Eddie Waxer through my church. In fact, that's how I found out about a certain team. My pastor was Stuart Briscoe, an Englishman, came over. He told us Sunday mornings about this team called Manchester United. So I continued to scratch my head, like, that's not football. But he gave us the lowdown. Eventually, I understood a little bit better. When I was a missionary in Cote d'Ivoire, I met some other missionaries from Northern Ireland, from Belfast, and they brought up video cassettes in the 1994, video cassettes of Match of the Day and different highlights from all the glory years of Manchester United. And I kept asking about this other light blue team, Manchester City. He said, well, don't worry about them. They're going to get relegated, and they're going to be forgotten about soon. But 2008 happened, and all of a sudden that's all people talk about. But you can tell us about your experience of chaplain at the Manchester City. Was it the good days, the bad days, the not so great days, and what was it like working with various managers like Kevin Keegan, Joe Royal, and even Stuart Pearce? Yeah,
well, the whole point about chaplaincy, you don't join a club because it's doing well. You do because it's local. And it's not about praying for winning. That's ridiculous. And I tell everywhere I go, you can forget superstition. Just forget it. And the one thing they used to say to me at Manchester City was, you turn up when we lose. Other people turn up when we win. And chaplains are there to support the club in the highs and the lows. So I was invited in 1996. I lived in a place called Moss Side, which is where the training ground was, which is where Main Road was. I was the rector there. And I got a phone call from a World Cup winner in '66 called Alan Ball, who was the manager at the time. And he said, I want you to be, I know people who know you. I'd like to invite you to be the chaplain of Manchester City. And this is why. you'll treat the cleaner the same way as the centre forward. And chaplains have to get that. They have to get that. They're there for everybody. And it's largely pastoral. You've got to be what I call reactive before you're proactive. You can't go in chucking Bibles around a dressing room. It doesn't work. But if you're known as somebody, I would go down every week with my dog collar on so they knew who I was. I'm not trying to hide away. And when people were ready, they would come and talk to me and say things like, can you have a word with him for me? I'm not on speaking terms. I'd say, have a word yourself. And so I did that kind of thing. And after a while, people would say, I want to talk a bit about faith. I said, yes, but I'm never going to the newspapers with anything you say to me. And actually the killing phrase in the end, when I left Manchester City to be a bishop in Nottingham was, he's my confidential Christian friend. That'll do me.
Yeah.
You're not there for reflected glory. You're not there to get autographs. You're not there to get photographs. You're not there to get scarves for the raffle or whatever. None of that nonsense. You're there to be a confidential Christian friend, whether they win or they lose. And when they're ready, they'll ask you about Jesus. And let me tell you, they do. But they have to be sure that you're a confidential Christian friend. You don't preach about who you met at the training ground. It's ridiculous. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that goes on exactly what Warren Evans said, the CEO of Sports Chaplaincy UK. He said the exact same thing about how you just said there, treat the tea lady the way you treat their players. And he said around exactly what you just said there, but you really condensed it brilliantly around showing up like professional players. They always know when people who turn up when they win, but who's actually there when they don't win. And that thing you said there about chaplaincy, getting alongside people regardless of the score, because we already won, right? There's a victory. We play a bigger game that's going on, and those chaplains are there through the hardest moments in life, and you doing that in that way is fantastic. I mean, what was it like? I know Carl's wearing blue now, by the way, so he's a bit more, he's got there in the end. He's got there exactly. But I'm a Newcastle fan, so Kevin Keegan, what was it like between that transition as a chaplain? When managers changed, like Kevin Keegan, Joe Royal, Stuart Pearce, what was that like for you as a chaplain? Did things change? Did you have to restart again? What was it like just with that change in management at Manchester City?
Well, I was established as the chaplain, so I was welcoming them, not the other way around. I'm the chaplain, the manager's coming in, a lot of pressure on them and all the rest of it. And you see, at Manchester City, when I got there in '96, they were losing pretty regularly, actually. Doesn't make any difference to me. No difference at all. There's a lot of glory boys there now, but when I was appointed chaplain, they were losing quite regularly. Doesn't make any difference. So it was Alan Ball that appointed me, and then there were a few problems. We went through a lot of managers, and then Joe Royal came, and Joe lives only a few miles away. We see him regularly now. He's a very, very close personal friend. He's a wonderful guy. I've just done an evening called Faith and Football with him. When he asked me, I asked him about his football career. He asked me about my Christian journey and what it meant to me. And then I asked him about his managerial career. And it was, it's what I call putting Jesus on the agenda. And it's funny because I thought when Joe was appointed, I thought, well, I'm the chaplain. I'll go and welcome him. So I went in to see him, and I said, have they told you that there's a chaplain? Because I am. Have they told you there's a chaplain? He said, no, they warned me. He's a wonderful character. And again, when Kevin Keegan came, he rang me up and said, I'd like you to come down the ground and spend some time with you. We spent 45 minutes one-to-one. That's okay. And then he said, you don't need one of those lanyards. You've got a dog collar. You've got my permission to go anywhere in the training ground or, the ground itself. You've got absolute access everywhere. When he finished, Stuart Pearce was the captain at the time. He became the manager. Same all over again. So they were fantastic. They were absolutely fantastic. They were nothing but supportive, not pushy. I said, I don't want any publicity. Everybody in the club knows here, this is not about publicity outside. So they were all incredibly supportive. and I'm still regularly in contact with the three of them.
Oh,
They're friends.
Yeah. And what highlights there, it's around trust and relationships. And you've just said that you're still in touch with them now. So really great examples. Then I love that, putting Jesus on the agenda. Well, you certainly did that when you were, in those roles, and you were rector in Moss Side, which I know you could share a lot of stories around that. But when you then became Bishop of Sherwood, tell us about that journey. So you went from into there, and you were still keeping Jesus on the agenda, and obviously you moved into the role as bishop. Share how that kind of came around, and then we'll dive into what it looked like when you were there.
Well, I thought when I was asked to, one of the bishops in Manchester asked me to pop round and said, have I thought about being a bishop? And I thought he'd been at the paracetamols, honestly. I thought he was off the planet. But Lucille and I prayed about it together and felt it was right. It's very, very hard for me to leave Moss Side because it was an area with a lot of problems. It's very well documented. And for me, that's where churches need to be. I'd be dangerous in the suburbs. I'd just be dangerous. But in the inner city, there's very obvious need and there's huge problems. And the church was a phenomenal witness in Moss Side, and it still is. We had to repeat the morning service because they couldn't all get in. What do you want to leave that place for? But we prayed about it, felt it was right. And I thought, well, what can I do as a bishop that I couldn't do as a vicar? And I thought, well, when I prayed about it, I thought, well, the one thing I know is for other people's ministry. Like a local vicar can't get hold of Joe Rowland's any chance of being a chaplain. But I can, we went to Nottingham, obviously, and I can contact a chief exec or a manager and say, I'm the bishop here, any chance of a cup of tea? And you have to realise that one of my friends who was a manager at City was Stuart Pearce, who is an icon in Nottingham. He was captain of Nottingham Forest, played for England. And they read that. I didn't write that. There was a big article in the Nottingham Post, and it was clear that Stuart had enjoyed our time together. So opened the door immediately to Nottingham Forest. And they said, well, we've not had a chaplain before, but if Stuart says it's good, great. So I said, I'm not going to be the chaplain. I want to negotiate it in a way the local vicar can't. So they said, you find one for us. So I went to Simon Cansdale, who was the vicar of in West Bridgeford. And I said to him, would you like to think about being the chaplain to Nottingham Forest? So I went and bought a red shirt. And again, he was a pastor. He didn't do it for reflected glory. Having opened up in Nottingham Forest, I think the next one was probably Notts County. And again, they'd heard, and I said, I'm not going to be the chaplain. I'm going to put somebody in. And then the other professional team in Nottinghamshire was Mansfield Town. So again, contacted them. Cup of tea, I'm the new bishop. Of course, we'd like to see the new bishop. This is what's on the agenda. Tell us a bit more about it. Fine. Can you find us a chaplain? Yeah. So I did. So what I could do as a bishop that local vicars can't do and local ministers can't do is get access to people, because people understand that a bishop has divine authority. There's no question about that. They might not be a Christian, but they recognise the role. And I had no problem at all getting in contact with Nottingham Forest, Notts County, Mansfield Town, and they all appointed chaplains. And I was very clear I wasn't going to do it. I was going to find somebody for them, which is what I did. And it's funny, when you're as a bishop, you ring up a vicar and say, I've got an idea for you. Bishop, you don't know how busy I am. Bishop, I'm stressed out of my mind. No. I said, oh, well, leave it. What was it? Well, I just wondered if you'd like to be chaplain to Mansfield Town. I could see at 6 a.m, 10 a.m, week on. You tell me when you're free, Bishop. Yeah, they're not so stressed then, I tell you.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very good.
They were very good and hugely appreciated. No problem.
And that's sports ministry, right? Because everyone wants to be part of it in some way. I think that's a lot of our listeners will kind of understand that. So, you've just shared there around how you became bishop and then all those kind of doors that you opened for others and these conversations you were having and stuff. But there was a really significant thing that happened, which really affected me, because later on that helped open a door into how I got into more sports ministry. But this is something we'd love to chat around. You were commissioned by the Archbishops of Canterbury and York as the National Church of England Sports Ambassador. So tell us a little bit about that. That's, for people around the world, that was something that was a significant thing that happened. Share with us around how that came about, and kind of just what you've done there around chaplaincy. What were some of the highlights around that, and what you kind of tried to set up?
Well, what happened there was it was Archbishop Justin Welby, who was a prayer partner at the time. Archbishop sent me from York. We trained together, and they said, what you've done in Nottinghamshire is to put Jesus on the agenda in sports clubs and amongst people who love football. They're not Christians necessarily, but you've been able to put Jesus on the agenda, and you've used the role as a bishop to open the doors for sport ministry in Nottinghamshire. Would you mind doing it for every diocese in the Church of England? There's 42. Yeah, but I'll do it my way. They said, we know that. It's all right. We know that. And I said, the deal is, each year, I'll ask every bishop in every diocese in England to send 2 people to a training evening. If you're in the north, or training day, if it's in the north, it'll be hosted at Archbishop's Palace. I'm not going anywhere else. You're hosting it, and you're going to be there. And if it's in the south, it's at Lambeth Palace, and Archbishop Justin, you're going to be there. I don't care if it's only 10 minutes, but this is, if I'm the Archbishop's ambassador, then you have to play your role as well. And they said, we can do 10 minutes a year and we can host it, and that's fine. So I wrote to every bishop in the Church of England, and everyone in the north sent 2 people represent. I said, I'm not choosing them. They're not going to be my mates. You send them. I'll train them. And that's not a problem. And every bishop in the south, I was given this role by the Archbishop. So every bishop in the south sent 2 representatives, and they chose who they were. So we would have a day of worship, Bible teaching, input from people in the world of professional football. So in the south, Stuart Pearce came along, but I didn't announce it. I don't want them turning up for a name. At 12 o'clock, I announced after lunch, we'll have Stuart Pearce here, and he will share what it's been like on the other side of receiving chaplaincy. In the north, we had people like Joe Royal came, and you may know of the chief executive of Mansfield is Carolyn Radford. She was the female chief executive. So she came and they shared what it was like. And I said, don't tell them it's been nice having a chaplaincy. Just tell us what it was like and why it's important. So we did these days for a few years, and it was fantastic. And the whole point was, here's some ideas. You go back to your diocese, whether it's Leeds or Rochester or Truro, listen to the ideas, and then you try and put things in place. Now, some work better than others, but that's fine. I said, I'm not popping around the country. You're coming to me. And that's all that's happened. So some fantastic things in some places, not so much in others, but that's their responsibility. But because I was the Archbishop's Sport Ambassador, the bishops all knew about it, and every bishop in the Church of England was very supportive and sent representatives. Pretty simple, really.
Yeah. And you set up the Ministry of Sport in Nottingham, and that was something that I came and did for 2 years there, and really benefited from that training. So I'm grateful for you and your role. That helped me then, 10 years now with Sports Friends give me a really good foundation. So, things like that, you may never see the impact of all the stuff that you've kind of set up and opened doors. And I'm certainly grateful for that as well. I'm also grateful for your quotes. I've had quite a lot on this already. We've had reactive, not proactive. We've had refire, not retire. But this is a classic that I love. You talked about it in Moss Side. This is where the church should be, or this is where the church should be in the margins, where people are. And this is a quote I want to read out. A church building for most people is like going to Mars. We have to be where the people are. And you mentioned it before, but why is the world of sport? I've heard you say a lot of the time, look, this mission field is on our doorstep. How do we practically be distinct and live in this massive ministry and mission opportunity, which is the world of sport?
It's key that we have to go where people are and they're playing sport. So when people become Christians, I want them to stay in the sport. I remember a cricketer came over, it's from the West Indies actually, and he became a Christian. And he said his pastor had told him that he couldn't play the sport anymore because it wasn't Christian. He had to come out and be a youth worker. And I went ballistic. I went absolutely ballistic, which I don't normally do, Ben. You've never seen me ballistic. You've never seen me.
No.
But it's just nonsense. And you have to live it out. You know, when I became a Christian, I think some of the people thought, because I put Jesus stickers on my hockey sticks, you know, why shouldn't they know I'm a Christian? And they thought because I was a Christian, I'd go soft on the hockey field. Well, we soon sorted that out. You know, I'm very competitive. I don't become less competitive because I'm a Christian. I want to win. I remember being told, you give you all in the game, but remember the game's not all. That's a very good phrase from Alan Godson, who was one of the original people of Christians in sport. You give your all in the game, but remember the game isn't all. I didn't go soft on the hockey pitch. I was as hard as nails. But I had to turn up regularly for training. I didn't say, I'm sorry, I can't come to training. I've got a Bible study. You can't do that. You can't do that. You have to be committed to your fellowship. You have to be committed to your daily walk with Jesus, but you'll have no credibility whatsoever in a team game if you don't turn up for training in time, if you don't take it seriously, if you don't look after people when they're injured, if you don't play to win, but remember at the end of the game you shake hands. So, yeah, give your all in the game. Remember the game isn't all. You have to be a Christian, and you'll make mistakes, you know. You'll make mistakes. When you make mistakes on the pitch, and it can be the umpire or the referee or whatever, you apologize. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You know, you won't get it all right. But if you're consistent over a period of time, people will know you're a Christian. So what would it be? About 35 years after I'd left and I was at Oxford University in the hockey team, the guy that was the captain, a fantastic guy called Pete Badger, died on a ski trip. Amazing how many of that squad got in contact with me that I hadn't seen for 35 years. And they said, we want you at the funeral because you're the Christian. But I didn't go soft when I was converted.
Well, I think as we come to the end, we learned a lot. I think from your quotes, I think, Bishop, that's where Ben started his book of quotes. I think he's on page 500 and something. He writes down, I think, the first maybe 100 pages all from you, but then he's gathered some others along the way. So you're an inspiration for Ben and me as well. We also learned that once a bishop, always a bishop, and that England plays the proper hockey, field hockey. And then we know from just your life lessons and your example of ministry, it's that sports ministry is vital. So I think maybe you can share with us any tool or advice for anyone in the field in sports ministry now, some of our listeners, some of our staff in various countries around the world, or even a tool or a word of advice to those who should get involved with sports ministry at the local church or national church level.
Yeah. Number one, love Jesus, don't lose it. Love Jesus, don't lose it. If you go back to some of the original people who were Christians within the world of sport, if you go back over 100 years, the guy called C.T. Studd, who was an England cricketer, what did he do? Took the gospel to China. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So that was C.T. Studd. And he always loved sport, but he never lost his passion for Jesus and sharing the gospel. You go back 100 years to the Olympics in Paris. Who was it? Eric Liddell. What did he do? Took the gospel to China. Did he ever lose his passion for Jesus? No. Did he always love sport? Yeah. So at whatever level, whether it's grassroots or elite level, it does not matter. Never lose your love and your passion for Jesus, but take sport seriously. But never let it become your God. And one of the issues, you've got to be careful when you're in the world of sport, whether it's football, hockey, rugby, whatever, sometimes the sport can take over. Don't let it. The ministry is about Jesus in the world of sport. It's to sport, not from sport.
So powerful. So powerful. Well, Bishop Tony, thank you so much for all that you've shared, your wisdom. I just wonder, we train coaches through local churches, and a lot of what we have is we try and get the authority from the top leaders, right? So bishops and things when we have denominational agreements and partnerships. I just wonder the last little thing, if there's ever any bishops listening to your voice, there's someone who's clearly seen the power of sports ministry. What would you say to any bishop or church leader who is on the fence around sports ministry? A lot of places we work in, they say, is sports evil? Is sport going to take over? We've just heard you say, love Jesus and never let sport take over. But I wonder, just last closing remarks around why should a bishop or denomination or other denominations, not just the Church of England and the Church of England, continue with sports ministry? And how do you see the future of sports ministry in the future?
Number one, when you contact a bishop, how about saying, how can I pray for you? What can you give me? No. How can I pray for you? It's a very, very, very demanding ministry. It always was, and it always is. And then you can say, well, if you're unsure, you can have a look at our podcast and see what Bishop Tony says.
That's exactly what we're going to do, and I'm going to do that. Don't have a committee meeting, have a prayer meeting. There's another one for you, which is fantastic.
And don't be afraid of saying, and you've got to be serious. How can I pray for you? It very rarely happens. It's what can you give me? It's nonsense. How can I pray for you? Have a look at the podcast.
Oh, love it. Now, Bishop Tony, thank you so much. And I know on Saturday you've got a big event in Nottingham Grace Church as well. Just want to share about that?
Yeah, it's on June the 15th. It's Ambassadors in Football, and people are coming together from all over the country. The whole Kick Out Racism group is there. I am passionate about that. We're all equal in the sight of God. I remember my hero before as a Christian was Martin Luther King. And I remember him saying, I look forward to the day when my grandchildren will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. That is part of the ministry of Christians in sport, to say Jesus loves us all. But to say people, look forward to seeing you on that day. Let's be trained. Let's pray together. But above all, never lose your passion for Jesus. We are ambassadors for Jesus.
Amen. Couldn't think of a better way to finish. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the doors you've opened for me personally. And I'm sure people, you never know, who listen to this in the future when we try and, vision share around the power of sports ministry. Thank you so much and for your time, and pray your refiring will continue as you continue with your 10 grandkids, one away from 11 aside team, and just continue to enjoy life, and most importantly, loving Jesus and doing what you're doing, scattering seeds of the gospel, which you've done for many, many years. So thank you so much, Bishop Tony. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
God bless.
My dog. I tell you what, we had royalty on season 1. We've got bishops on season 2. Eh?
Once a bishop, always a bishop.
There we go. We learned a lot, right? You learned a lot about the Church of England in that episode. What else kind of stood out for you? What else did we learn?
He's very humble in the sense that he's risen to different lengths being a bishop within the Church of England. So at the same time, he's very on the ground. I mean, he'd rather be talking to people, getting people to do the ministry rather than just talk about it. So I think it was great.
So good, so practical. And I obviously was a sports ambassador intern and in the Ministry of Sport in Nottingham, where he was the bishop. And all those things there about that practical advice and the things that you gave there has really helped us. You joked on about, my quotes, bit of quote evasion, but he gave us so much. He said, don't have a committee meeting, have a prayer meeting. That question, how can I pray for you? So much good stuff. And that quote there from Alan Godson, he said, give your all in the game, but remember the game isn't all. So much wisdom there, right? I mean, we've heard there the top church leader talk about the power of sport. What about in the world for us with sports friends? Have you got anyone who you think we could share around a church leader who talks about this in our context?
Yeah, I think we're going to show you a little clip from one of our latest Sports Friends videos. Coach Daria talking about women in the ministry, Sports Friends, sports ministry. So we'll show you a clip, and that will hopefully lead you to the Sports Friends YouTube channel. Go to Sports Friends INTL on YouTube, and you'll see some great videos. And you'll even see some of the previous episodes have already won.
Discouraging at the beginning because I was passionate to start this teaching that I received, and the parents would not give me the girls to play. The church would not approve for me to start immediately.
It still boils down to this cultural mentality. And it still boils down to how our foreparents lived. In the North specifically, there is that polarization, there is that segregation, there is that discrimination. But all of those things are changing. And this is where the gospel is having impact. I look forward to see young girls standing with their head up and doing whatever is needed to be done. They should have self-esteem, self-confidence, self-boldness to face the challenges of life.
Coach Daria has been helpful to me specifically. She has been trying to involve me. She advised me, we talk.
The coaches, they build that confidence for me to be able to speak out.
It's important for older females to mentor younger ones because it's like handing the baton. When you are not there, the people you have mentored are there, and so as they grow, younger ones are coming up. It keeps moving that way.
Good video. Hopefully you get to go back and watch the full video on your own time on YouTube. Sports Friends INTL for those listening.
So good. So good. Well, look, Mad Dog, I've got Bishop Tony, one of his books here, Seed Scattering. He's still scattering the seeds of the gospel. And I just want to read out this quote at the end, a little bit of wellness week. This is not that. This is wisdom from Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. It says this about the book. Bishop Tony urges us all to realize that our own hands are full of seeds, and we are those called to do the scattering. And wherever we are, maybe we're involved in sports ministry in some way, to scatter that seed of the gospel. He talks about putting Jesus on the agenda. I love that, what he said there. Loads of wisdom for everyone to look back and watch. And if anyone wants to get their hands on this, look, seed scattering, definitely worth getting your hands on. But for more motivation, wisdom, and insight like that, Mad Dog, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And we'll see you for the episode. But what do people have to do?
You know what? I think we're going to have to tell your friends, and then tell those friends, and even your parents. Tell your parents, friends. Just tell everybody.
Thanks again for joining us on Already Won, a Sports Friends podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform.